Breaking right now on Morning News Now, history in America this morning. Donald Trump is now the first former president to face federal criminal charges.
Last night, a federal grand jury indicted Trump on 7 charges after a months-long special counsel investigation stemming from dozens of classified documents found at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home.
Overnight, the former president, who's now running for the Republican nomination in 2024, lashed out, saying he is, quote, innocent, and calling the indictment election interference.
This is warfare for the law, and we can't let it happen. We can't let it happen. Our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump.
Good Friday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on a busy morning. I'm Savannah Sellers.
We have full team coverage of this historic indictment, including the impact on the 2024 Republican primary and reaction from Washington and beyond. But let's begin with NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos and NBC News correspondent Ron Allen, who is in Miami. Ron, we have been on the lookout for this possibility. Walk us through what we do know about this indictment, which is still sealed, and the charges the former president is likely facing.
Right. It is sealed, and that's a big issue. And there's some question as to whether it will be unsealed before the former president's first appearance here on Tuesday. Based on sources that we've talked to and based on interviews that the former president's attorneys have been giving, we believe that he faces 7 charges, and they include basically things like making false statements, conspiracy to obstruct justice, charges related to the Espionage Act, which generally falls under the category of retaining unlawfully national defense information. All of this, of course, revolving around the mishandling of about 100 or so classified documents that the National Archives attempted to get from Mr. Trump, and that he allegedly refused to give them. Perhaps there's some obstruction in the process of doing that. And these are serious felony charges that carry jail terms, potential jail terms of many years, several years each. So again, because this is still sealed, we don't know all the details of it. But it is, yes, extraordinary that a former president is facing these federal charges. They seem much more serious than the felony charges that he faces in New York for the alleged falsification of business records. And again, we expect him to be here on Tuesday for his first appearance. Joe?
Danny, let's bring you in on set here. What is the former president's best defense here?
I've got a list here. Number 1, he's going to say, accident. I didn't even know that I had these documents. He's going to suggest that it was my minions. It was not me. It was other people. These were swept into boxes as I left the White House. You've heard the declassified argument. That doesn't fly too well in the face of the Espionage Act, because the documents, it doesn't really matter if they're classified or not, as long as they are national defense information. A separate category, they can overlap, but it's not required that he even classify or declassify documents. Then he may argue, I expect him to argue, that he and his team were working to give these documents back. They were meeting with DOJ people, and DOJ people were too hot to trot to charge him, and they broke off the negotiations. He'll make the argument of selective prosecution. This motion gets filed fairly often. I've probably filed a few myself. They almost never win. And finally, politically, he's going to argue, and this is not really a legal argument, but he's already made the point, this is my political opponent for the White House, my Democratic opponent, his Justice Department prosecuting his greatest threat to the presidency. Again, it's not a legal argument, but politically speaking, for his campaign, it's probably his strongest, at least to his base.
This declassify argument is the one he seems to at least be making publicly. Hey, I have access to this. We've heard him say it in the CNN town hall, in the interview with Sean Hannity, but you're pointing out it may not be a strong argument in court right now.
Not at all. And it shows that he probably doesn't understand the underlying law, which is, this is a great example of how criminal defendants often think they should take matters into their own hands and get out there, get their word out, go to the press, and it's almost never a good idea. Every word he says can be used against him. But as evidence goes, all the words he says that are exculpatory, everything he says that says I'm not guilty, that generally cannot be admitted as evidence. And that makes sense. I mean, the mere fact that I say I didn't do it shouldn't be evidence that I didn't do it. Whereas if you make admissions that are against your interests, then traditionally we say, well, you wouldn't do that unless you believed you were guilty. So that comes in as evidence. So generally speaking, bad idea to talk.
Ron, we are learning a lot about the grand jury indictment process here. This indictment came down where you are in Miami. That's where the former president, as you mentioned, is scheduled to be arraigned on Tuesday. But there had been some question as to whether the special counsel would file these charges there or in Washington, where there was another grand jury, right?
Yes, a grand jury that we knew about in Washington that's been in session since November and looking at a number of things, not just the documents issue, but of course the January 6th issue. The special counsel has purview over those two issues, those two broad categories of potential charges. Miami got on the radar sometime last week. It appears that there has been a grand jury here for some time, though, listening to witnesses, and it makes sense because we are very close to Mar-a-Lago, the alleged scene of the alleged crime, and a lot of legal analysts are talking about venue being important, that the charges have to be brought near or at the place where the alleged crime took place, which is why we think that the case is now moved and centered and focused here in Miami. Whether there will be separate charges filed against other individuals or the former president in Washington remains to be seen. And of course, we're still not sure what's going to happen with the investigation into January 6th. But yes, this seems to be now the center of gravity, the place where the former president will appear on Tuesday and where this case will be based going forward. Joe?
Let's bring it back here again to Danny and talk about, our viewers probably remember lots of coverage as showing the president leaving Mar-a-Lago, arriving here in New York when he was indicted on state charges.
Right.
What's the difference here with federal in terms of the strength of the case, the strength of the federal government behind this? Walk us through this. We were talking about this before the show and what you kind of think could play out here.
Yeah, because now it just got real. When the state of New York charged Donald Trump, when Alvin Bragg in the Manhattan DA's office charged him, those charges don't impress me much. The reality is that I think those are defensible, maybe not morally so, but they are, and I think there's a consensus here, even among former DAs who were on the team, that there are some questions about the viability of those charges. But make no mistake about it, there is nowhere defense attorneys like me like being less than in federal court. 90+% of federal criminal cases end in guilty pleas. And of those that go to trial, 90+% end in guilty verdicts. So I can't do the math there, but that seems pretty close to 100% of the time. When you're in federal criminal court, you're going to get a guilty verdict or a guilty plea. Make no mistake about it, when the federal government investigates a case for this period of time and they make a case, it stays made. That's why there's all this talk about, well, they wanted to be in D.C., but now, they don't really want to be in Florida. Don't put too much stock in that. If they believe they have their case, the federal government doesn't care what their jury pool is. They'll bring a case anywhere.
We know this state case is likely going to go into next year when we're going to be in the heat of this Republican nomination battle, the caucuses and primaries kicking off. What's typically the process for a federal case like this? How long could this drag out? When could we possibly see a trial if it goes that far?
From the date of arraignment, the Speedy Trial Act requires that federal criminal cases be brought to trial within 70 days. Now, I add an asterisk and 10 footnotes because there are many exceptions to that rule. One of the biggest is that the defendant can waive his speedy trial rights. And you might do that if you have a complex case and you, the defendant, need more time to prepare. When you don't waive your speedy trial rights is when you don't think the state is ready and you want to hold them to that deadline. The problem is the federal government is almost always ready by the time they investigate a case and take it to indictment. They're usually ready to go to trial. So this is a case where you may see the defendant waiving that speedy trial and taking some time to prepare. The real strategy is how do you relate it to the campaign?
All right. Danny Ceballos, Ron Allen kicking us off this hour. Thank you both. We appreciate it.
Yes, big news. Thank you. Well, this news of this indictment came when Trump announced it last night in a series of posts on his social media platform, Truth Social.
He also posted a 4-minute video blasting the investigation and maintaining his innocence. Here's some of what he had to say.
It's election interference at the highest level. There's never been anything like what's happened. I'm an innocent man. I'm an innocent person. This is warfare for the law, and we can't let it happen. our country is going to hell, and they come after Donald Trump, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing the FBI. We can't let this continue to go on because it's ripping our country to shreds.
A spokesperson for the Department of Justice declined to comment on the case, but when Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Jack Smith as special counsel, he released a statement saying that he did that in order to underscore the Department of Justice's independence and to allow prosecutors to make decisions guided only by the facts and by the law. Let's get into how the White House and Capitol Hill are reacting. NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa and NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Circa join us for that.
Ali, let's start off with you. So far, we have not heard from the White House on this, no response. What's the reasoning behind that, and will we hear from the president at any point?
Yeah, guys, good morning. Still no reaction from the White House or this president. And that's very much intentional here because obviously the president, as a sitting president during this unprecedented moment, can't appear to have any sway or influence over this case, over this investigation. But he's also former President Trump's top 2024 rival, as the former president continues to make this case, continues to make this argument that this is all part of a political witch hunt, that this is intended to cut his chances in 2024. And we've seen the president say since really being elected that the Justice Department's independence, its separation from his White House was going to be honored and respected throughout his presidency. And as you mentioned, Joe, we saw that play out with Attorney General Merrick Garland's appointment of special counsel Jack Smith to oversee this entire investigation. And so we know that the White House official told us last night that the White House found out about this news like everybody else through media reports. And that's really how this was all intended to be in the beginning. So the caveat here is even though the president hasn't spoken about this, hasn't commented on this yet, that doesn't mean he's not going to. He's going to be at an event in North Carolina this later today to honor military families. And he's no doubt going to be swarmed by reporters asking him to react to this. So the White House, the president, trying to stay as far away from this as possible, but whether they can actually do that is a big question.
I'll definitely be asked about it. So, Julie, we know who is talking about it, Republican House leadership. They're rallying behind Trump, but it seems the GOP Senate leadership has been quiet, right? I mean, talk to us about who is talking and who isn't talking right now.
Yeah, good morning, guys. That's exactly right. Let's stick on that real quickly, because what we're seeing now is similar to what we saw a couple weeks ago when we saw the former president charged in New York. We see this divide, really fissure among Republicans in Congress, different reaction coming from House Republican leadership versus Senate Republican leadership. We haven't heard a peep from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. We haven't heard from him comment on that last case either. So this tracks. And of course, he has a very tense public and private relationship with the former president. We also haven't heard from his number two, John Thune, who hasn't said anything since this indictment came out last night. And I did get a chance to talk to him a couple of hours earlier in the day yesterday. He, of course, came out endorsing Senator Tim Scott for president in 24, but he did say that the drama around the former president is something voters may be tired of, though he did say, let's let this process play out. Let's pull up on the screen, if we can, some reaction we're seeing on the flip side from House Republicans, including Speaker McCarthy, who tweeted last night saying, I and every American who believes in the rule of law stand with President Trump against his grave injustice. House Republicans will hold his brazen weaponization of power accountable. You'll remember that last time when the former president was indicted in New York, he directed the House to actually come up with inquiries, send letters, try to compel New York DA Alvin Bragg to come and testify before the committee. We'll see if we see similar actions coming from the House. In this case, of course, this is different because this is the federal government.
And Julie, let's talk about the other side of this. Of course, we're hearing a much different message from Democrats. What have we heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can imagine the Democrats on the flip side of this, though they don't know what's in this indictment, of course, are supportive of these efforts of the federal government. They are not saying that this is political in nature, like you're hearing from some of the former president's supporters here in Congress on the Republican side of the aisle. So let's pull up some of that reaction, if we may. Of course, Congress is out of town, so the only way we'll get a chance to hear from them is with these public statements on Twitter or other news programs, if you will. But you see this tweet from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. He's the Democratic leader. He says the rule of law is central to the integrity of our democracy. It must be applied without fear or favor. So Democrats really taking this tone of this is something the former president deserves. These charges are adherent with our justice system. The federal government did put a special prosecutor to this case. So they are trying to strike this different tone than Republicans are, who are, for the most part, defending the former president and are largely in his camp.
You know, Allie, Trump is saying his situation is similar to President Biden. He was also found to be in possession of classified documents from his time in the Obama administration. Can these two cases really be compared? Real quickly here, what are the differences?
Yeah, Joe, not only from his time in the Obama administration, but also as far back as decades before when he was a senator. And so these two cases, very, very different. We know that the president immediately upon the discoveries of these classified documents called the National Archives, called the FBI to come and retrieve them. And in the former president's case, you remember he returned some of those classified documents after being asked by the National Archives. But even after being subpoenaed for the documents that officials knew he still had at Mar-a-Lago, he did not return them. And prosecutors are saying that he even went so far as to have them moved into a storage facility, the ones he still held on to. So these are two very, very different cases. Obviously, the current president, President Biden's handling of classified documents, still under investigation by its own special counsel. But just the facts in each of these cases, very, very different.
Allie and Julie, thank you both so much.
Let's bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray with more on how this could impact the presidential race. Mark, good morning. So the GOP field has grown even more this week. We now have 10 declared candidates running for the White House. Trump still the clear frontrunner according to polls. How are Trump's rivals reacting to last night's news?
Many of Donald Trump's rivals who ended up commenting last night defended the former president. You ended up seeing Ron DeSantis, possibly the chief rival to Donald Trump, complain about the weaponization of the federal government under the Biden administration. We also heard a similar argument from Tim Scott, the Republican senator from South Carolina, as well as Vivek Ramaswamy. But we did end up hearing some different comments from Chris Christie, who got into the presidential race earlier this week, tweeting that no one is above the law. And we need to see the facts come out as they may. And of course, the indictment has not come out yet. And so Chris Christie preaching some patience. And then Asa Hutchinson, the former Arkansas governor, ended up releasing a statement last night calling for Donald Trump to resign. Now, those voices are in the minority, and most of the Republicans who are defending Donald Trump right now, it is very reminiscent to back in April when Donald Trump was first indicted on state charges in New York.
Yeah, so despite that first indictment that was just earlier in the spring, that hush money case, Trump has continued, as Joe said, to have this overwhelming support in the polls, be the clear frontrunner. We're a little more than 2 months from the first primary debate. How does this new indictment impact the 2024 race? Do we know yet?
Yeah, Savannah, look, you're exactly right that after that first indictment, we only saw Donald Trump's lead grow in Republican polling in that presidential contest. And in our own NBC News poll back in April after those New York charges, we found 68% of Republican primary voters saying that they want to stand behind Donald Trump versus 26% who say maybe it's time for another general election nominee who won't be distracted by these kind of investigations. Now, it is important to note that we have yet to survey these newest charges. We always need to be on the lookout for changes in public opinion. I guarantee you we'll be able to do it. You and I will talk about future polls that end up coming. But previously, we have seen a Republican Party rally around Donald Trump, and we'll see if that happens again.
Yeah, the state charges a few weeks back seemed to help him out in the polls, so we'll see what happens with the federal ones as well. Mark, thank you so much.
Well, NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss is with us now. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on a big morning. And I just want to start by asking you your reaction when you heard about this new indictment, the first time a former president is facing federal charges.
It's a day I never expected to see. It's surreal, and I thought never wanted to see. Because I think, you know, for Republican leaders to say this is the weaponization of our system, you know, they're insulting that grand jury in Miami that heard out the evidence and returned an indictment against Donald Trump for the first time of any president with federal criminal charges. So if you believe in our system And let's say if you're even skeptical that Donald Trump did any of the things that we're about to find out that he is accused of, let's have some faith in our system and our rule of law. He will get a fair trial. He will be declared guilty or not guilty.
Michael, you always help us use history to understand the present and even the future. We know this is an unprecedented event in American history, but are there any other events we can kind of look to as any sort of guidance on something like this?
Joe, the closest would be 1974. Richard Nixon resigned from office, was being charged not by the legal process, but by critics and probably by Congress, had he stayed in office, of things like obstruction of justice and conspiracy, other bad things. Nixon thought that he was going to be indicted. He called up members of Congress and suggested to them that he was having nightmares about the cell door closing on him in prison. Members of his family went to the new President Ford and said, "We're worried that Nixon is going to kill himself. He's so depressed." 1 month after Nixon left office, Ford pardoned Nixon, spared him ever having to go to trial, gave him a, quote, full, free, and absolute pardon. The sad thing is, 1977, only 3 years later, Nixon goes on TV with David Frost, as we've seen in Frost-Nixon, the movie and play of a few years back. And Nixon tells David Frost, and this is a verbatim quote, "Well, if the president does it, that means it is not illegal." So Nixon used Ford's grace in giving him a pardon to basically say the White House is a free crime zone.
So for his part here, and I actually want to ask you kind of similarly related to what you feel that did to the office of the president, the perception of it, what happens now? First, for his part, I mean, Trump has pleaded not guilty in the New York investigation on those state charges, said he did nothing wrong as well in this Florida case. But it is important to note, as we've been discussing just a moment ago with Mark Murray, that Trump is the front runner at this point for the Republican nomination in 2024. There is a lot of public support behind him and a lot of public criticism about this. What do these historic indictments do to impact the perception of the office of the president?
Well, you can look at it two ways. One is, as many people are saying that, Trump will raise money off of it. People will be indignant and say, gee, we feel so badly for him that he's being given a bum rap that we want to put him in the Oval Office again. I have to think that people have enough faith in our system that at the very least they will say, if a grand jury in Miami voted this indictment, first time in history for an American president, maybe there's something wrong here, and maybe we shouldn't reward him with the presidency without knowing exactly what happened. As of now, we not only don't know that in terms of legal evidence, we don't even know exactly what the indictment says. Right. We will know in several days.
Michael Beschloss, we always appreciate your expertise on a morning like this. Thank you very much for your time.
My honor. Thank you both.
Welcome back. We are continuing to follow the latest developments this morning in the new indictment against former President Donald Trump. We will have the very latest in just a few moments. But now we want to turn to that other big story, the latest on the unrelenting smoke that has been blanketing the eastern part of the United States. The hazardous plumes have been choking much of the Northeast the past several days. And while we're seeing some improvements, more than 100 million people are still under air quality alerts. Philadelphia nearly maxing out the air quality index with a hazardous 444 rating on Thursday, achieving the world's worst air quality. That was a distinction we had here in New York earlier in the week. Now the smoke is heading south, shrouding our nation's capital in a haze and forcing people to cancel outdoor events. We've got team coverage this morning. Of course, Andrew Lassman is here with us, and she's going to tell us when we can expect a break from all this. But first, we check in with NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa, who is on the ground in Philadelphia. Hi, Emily. Good morning. I mean, this again, as we just mentioned, recorded the worst air quality in the world yesterday. It does look like conditions are improving there, but when can we expect the smoke to move out, and how does it feel this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, we've seen a dramatic improvement from that 444 AQI yesterday. The good news is it does appear that the days of the apocalyptic orange that washed over much of the Northeast appear to be over. But as you can see in the distance, we are not entirely out of the haze yet. And for that reason, we're continuing to see the cancellation and postponement of various events. Schools here in Philadelphia, also in New York City, moved to online. Other districts taking similar steps along the I-95 corridor as this toxic air persists for yet another day. You talk about that AQI, that 444, and officials encouraging people to continue to lean on the Air Now Gov app, which is something we've been talking about so much this week. It appears people are listening because it's actually one of the most downloaded apps ahead of Instagram and TikTok. Right now, it's reading 109, which is unhealthy for sensitive groups. And so over the next couple of days, as these pollution levels continue to fluctuate, officials are encouraging people to, again, check them momentarily to guide people's decision making on terms of how much time they're going to be spending outdoors. Savannah and Joe.
I think a few days ago, a lot of us didn't even know about these air quality numbers, and now we all know 300 is bad, 400 is even worse. We're learning all about it. So, Emily, this all, of course, comes from the wildfires in Canada. What's the latest on those fires, and what are we learning about the role that climate change is playing here?
Well, I'll tell you this. We've seen an unprecedented week of smoke here in the U.S., and that is streaming down from an unprecedented start to the wildfire season in Canada. Right now, there are more than 400 wildfires burning, millions of acres already burned year to date in our northern neighbor. More than half of the wildfires burning right now are considered out of control. So the U.S. answering calls and pleas from Canada to send more assistance in. Already hundreds of firefighters from the U.S. on the ground. President Biden agreeing to send more available federal resources, assets, equipment to Canada as they continue this fire fight. When it comes to climate change, we know from experts and research that it leads to drier and hotter conditions. That is fuel for fire. It increases dramatically the risk for fire. And I think the other thing that people are pointing out, and it's a bit of a cause for concern among environmental scientists, is that, remember, this is the early part of the wildfire season for Canada. Again, like I mentioned before, an unprecedented start. Peak season for Canada is actually July. So it does have some people concerned of, is this just a sign of a smokier summer and what's to come for the rest of the year, guys?
All right, Emily Aketa, thank you so much.
So how long is this unhealthy air going to stick around? Is it going to impact your weekend? Let's get some answers in your Morning News Now weather forecast.
Which, of course, Angie Lastman is going to bring us. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Emily made some great points there. She's absolutely right with all of those impacts as far as climate change is concerned. And we also really had to have the kind of perfect weather setup for what we saw over the past couple of days to evolve across parts of the United States. So here's that setup. It's really important because we're going to see changes to this, and that means changes to your air quality forecast as you go in through the weekend. So we've seen this kind of omega block. That's what it's called. When we see this setup of the high in the middle, you can see the kind of dip in the jet stream of what it looks like is an omega. That's where it gets the name. Either way, these Quebec fires have ushered in that northerly wind with this kind of stuck pattern for days and days and days, making a beeline into parts of course, the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic, keeping it smoky for days as this low remained fairly stationary right near Maine. We're going to slowly but surely start to see that migrating just a little bit. Not a lot for today, but major improvements as far as that moving out of the picture and that pattern kind of releasing at least a little bit as we get into tomorrow. You can see it finally moves out. We'll start to deal with some southwesterly winds, and what that does, it ushers the smoke, of course, away from us and into portions of Canada north of those fires. So in the meantime, we've got 82 million people impacted by this unhealthy air directly related to those wildfires. We've also got people dealing with ozone once again today. So if you live in the plains, that's something you're dealing with. But when it comes to the fires, this map looks a whole lot better. We, of course, aren't seeing quite as many purples and maroons on the map as we did yesterday, but we still do have a couple of spots dealing with the unhealthy or the code red along parts of the Mid-Atlantic. Some oranges for places like Philadelphia. Remember, that's for sensitive groups. It's unhealthy. So if you do, again, have those pre-existing conditions, the lung issues, the heart issues, you're going to want to take the precautions again today. Notice places like Richmond ending up in the 120 range. A big improvement again from yesterday, but not completely out of the woods. New York looking a lot better, 59. So we are back doing really well with our air quality, and you can see that smoke kind of working its way offshore here as we go through the next day or so. We'll see much nicer conditions. Even tomorrow, it'll be a big improvement. That kind of haze will still be around in some spots like Washington, D.C. as we get into tomorrow, but New York will be much better. Detroit will be better. Pittsburgh, even, you'll start to see some of those improvements. One minor note, I know it's been kind of an air quality centric forecast for the past couple of days, but we do have some strong storms that are possible in parts of the middle of the country as well as the southeast. And specifically tomorrow for any outdoor plans in the afternoon and evening hours, focus is really going to be in Texas, parts of the southern plains where we do have the potential to see some large hail. This could be tennis ball size otherwise. It just comes, Saturday, I always worry when we have severe weather on Saturdays, people are outdoors. So just make sure you have a way to get those alerts.
Especially during graduation season and all the parties that are happening outside. All right.
That's serious. Yeah. All right, Angie, thank you.
Turning to international news, the war in Ukraine could be entering a new phase. NBC News has learned that Ukrainian forces have now launched their much talked about counteroffensive. That's according to a senior officer and a soldier who spoke to NBC on condition of anonymity. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now from Zaporizhzhia with more on this. So, Raf, you were one of the people who broke this news. Tell us what you're learning and what Kyiv is saying about it.
So, Joe, we have known for months that Ukraine's military was planning for this counteroffensive. They were training, they were marshaling their forces. But when exactly they were launching their attacks was one of their most closely guarded secrets. As you said, a senior Ukrainian officer and a soldier near the front lines here in Zaporizhzhia now confirming to us that the counteroffensive is underway. They would not go into details about where exactly Ukrainian forces are attacking, nor exactly what their objectives are, but we know from both the White House and the British government that there is intense fighting underway along multiple sectors of that hundreds-mile-long front line in the east and the south of this country. Kyiv, President Zelensky have maintained a strict policy of not officially commenting on the counteroffensive, but this is a very significant phase of this war because this may be Ukraine's last best chance to make significant gains on the battlefield. The Ukrainian military is flush with those Western-supplied weapons, but they also know that time is not infinite for them, and they are very closely watching the politics in Washington now that the Republicans are in charge of the House of Representatives, where there is a lot of skepticism about continuing to send military supplies to Ukraine.
Raf, there have been reports of heavy fighting in the Zaporizhzhia region where you are. The Russians, they say they've repelled several Ukrainian attacks. What is the situation like over there? And remind us just how important this region is strategically.
Yeah, so both the Russians and the Ukrainians confirming that there is heavy fighting underway to the east of us. And what you're seeing on your screen right now is drone footage from the Russian Ministry of Defense. If we could maybe just bring that drone footage back up again. This is footage not verified by NBC News, but we have shown it to two independent analysts, and they tell us it shows something very significant, that what you are seeing on your screen are Western battle tanks, German-made Leopard 2s, in action, deployed by Ukrainian forces for the first time in combat. Now, we know Ukraine has been holding back some of its best weapons, some of its freshest troops for this offensive. And the fact that these Western battle tanks are now on the front line is a sign of just how significant this counteroffensive is, and that the Ukrainians really are putting all their chips on the table.
Raf, let's talk about the other big story from this week, that dam collapse earlier this morning. Kyiv claimed that it had proof Russia was behind the incident. What can you tell us about that and the reaction to that?
Yeah, so Ukraine's domestic security agency, the SBU, has put out what it says is a recording of Russian operatives acknowledging between themselves in a phone call that they were responsible for destroying the Kakhovka Dam on the Dnieper River. NBC News has not verified that, and we should be cautious about this. As well as the war on the battlefield, there is an information war, a fight to shape the narrative here. The Kakhovka Dam remains under Russian control. The dam itself is almost entirely destroyed, so it is extremely difficult to get direct evidence of what happens there. But Western officials are saying the intelligence they have appears to indicate or lean towards the possibility that it was Russia who blew up the dam. Guys.
Raf Sanchez in Ukraine. Raf, thank you.
Welcome back. We are staying, of course, on top of that major news out of Florida. For the first time in American history, a former president is facing federal charges. NBC News has learned a federal grand jury indicted the former president, Donald Trump, on 7 criminal charges. This is all in connection with special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into Trump's handling of more than 100 classified documents discovered last year at his Mar-a-Lago estate in South Florida.
Two sources familiar with the matter confirm the indictment, with one adding that Trump received a summons to appear in U.S. District Court on Tuesday. Two sources briefed on the 7 charges say they include false statements and conspiracy to obstruct. All of the charges are related to retaining documents and obstructing justice. The former president lashed out on social media last night, saying he was innocent and calling the indictment, quote, a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time.
There's a lot to follow on this story, so we're going to stay on top of it, and we'll continue to bring you the latest developments throughout the morning. Well, this morning, black voters in Alabama are celebrating a Supreme Court victory that could have widespread implications. In a 5-4 ruling, the Supreme Court backed arguments from a lower court, which argued that a Republican-drawn congressional map discriminated against black voters in the state. NBC News senior reporter Jane Tim joins us now for more on this. Hey, Jane, good to see you. So walk us through what this case is all about, and then also the significance of this ruling.
Yeah, so the case was about whether the Republican legislature in Alabama had to draw a second black district in their congressional maps. They had packed as many black voters as they could into this one district instead of drawing 2. And in this black belt region of Alabama, there were enough voters to have 2 majority black districts, and they had chosen not to do that. This is sort of a textbook case of the test of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2, which says you cannot do this kind of thing. You cannot diminish the voting power of another group. But because the Supreme Court had taken the case, there was a lot of concern that they were going to invalidate Section 2 or hollow it out in some ways, as they have done to other parts of the Voting Rights Act. So while the precedent essentially has just been affirmed, the law has not substantially changed, there was a lot of concern that it was going to, which is what made this ruling so sort of historic and important and has given it so much legs around the country.
Yeah, so let's talk about the way that this majority came to be, what it was made up of. It was an unusual combination. 2 conservative justices, Roberts and Kavanaugh, siding with the 3 liberal judges. How surprising was that? As you mentioned, there was concern about how this would go. So how surprising was the outcome? And do we know why those justices ruled the way that they did? What can we glean from the opinion?
It is surprising, and then just sort of on its face, that John Roberts, someone who essentially, wrote the opinion gutting the Voting Rights Act years ago in Section 5, had wrote the majority opposing it in Section 2. So it was somewhat surprising, but only unless you think that the Supreme Court is going to invalidate 40 years of jurisprudence. So as one source put it to me, it's only groundbreaking if you expect them to rewrite the law. So if you expect them to take the precedent and use that, it's not.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Jane, what kind of impact could this ruling have on other states facing similar issues with gerrymandering?
Yeah, a fair amount of federal courts and even the Supreme Court have put rulings in other states on hold, waiting for this ruling. So look to see maps in as many as 4 states change. Alabama, of course, will go first, redrawing their map, but Louisiana is likely to follow, adding a second black district there as well. Georgia has a trial that could go to will go to trial in September. And Texas also has a Voting Rights Section 2 challenge. All of these could be affected by this precedent, as federal courts, if they see that the fact patterns apply in a similar way, are going to apply this ruling too.
Jane, Tim, thank you very much.
A programming note, tonight on News Now, you can watch our special program focusing on the LGBTQ+ community. It includes interviews with 2 well-known drag artists who discuss the recent attacks on the art form. We also chat with a former GOP lawmaker who has a transgender son. Pride 2023 out front. Of course, it was originally supposed to stream last night, but was preempted for breaking news. No worries. You can watch tonight at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now.
There we go. Friday night plans.
There you go.
Just made them for you.
We're back on this Friday with a look at financial headlines. General Motors is making moves to leverage the top tech for electric vehicles.
CNBC's Pippa Stevens joins us now with that and other money news. Hey, Pippa, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Well, General Motors is joining rival Ford in partnering with Tesla to use its North American charging network and technologies for electric vehicles. Under the deal, GM vehicles will be able to access 12,000 of Tesla's fast chargers starting next year. GM CEO Mary Barra told CNBC on Thursday that the deal will save the automaker up to $400 million of a previously announced $750 million investment to build out EV charging. The U.S. dollar bouncing off of two-week lows on this Friday morning, shrugging off earlier weakness that followed a spike in weekly jobless claims. The number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefits surged to the highest level in more than 1.5 years last week, pushing the dollar index down to its largest one-day fall since the regional banking crisis in March. And U.S. household wealth hitting its highest level in a year during the first quarter of 2023. Elevated by a strong stock market, Americans' net worth rose to nearly $149 trillion. That's according to the Federal Reserve's quarterly report on U.S. financial accounts. Americans also saw the value of their stock holdings increase by $2.4 trillion, offsetting a $600 billion decline in real estate holdings. Despite the increase, Americans' net worth is still below the recent high point of nearly $153 trillion recorded in early 2022. Of course, inflation and surging prices not helping on household wealth numbers.
Yeah, we need more money to pay for all that expensive stuff. All right, Pippa, thank you so much. The wildfire smoke from Canada is taking a toll on air travel across the country. That's causing major headaches for travelers.
According to Flight Tracker, by Thursday evening, more than 4,200 flights to, from, and within the U.S. were delayed. Joining us now to discuss is the Points Guy managing editor, Clint Henderson. Hey, Clint, good to see you. So the FAA said yesterday that they had delayed flights bound for New Jersey's Newark Airport and certain flights to LaGuardia, both those kind of in this New York area. What should you do if your flight has been impacted?
So you should, first of all, know what other options you have so you can tell the airline, put me on this alternative flight. Make sure when you're booking your flights that you're booking with a credit card that has trip delay and interruption insurance because you want to be reimbursed for any expenses that you incur on a long delay or a cancellation, God forbid. But you have to keep in mind that the airlines don't technically owe you anything for long delays or cancellations due to what they call an act of God, or in this case, wildfire smoke. So know your rights. Usually you can argue with the airlines, get compensation, but if you've booked the trip with a credit card that offers those protections, you're in even better shape.
There's so many things we worry about when we travel that I don't think this was a scenario that was on too many people's minds until now. So, Clint, the good news is Angie showed us the map earlier. Things are going to look better today and into this weekend. Still, meteorologists say that some of the fog could persist into next week. So how can people stay ahead of changes that might be made to their flights today or over the weekend?
So the first thing I would say is the good news about traveling in wildfire smoke is generally it's safe, so it doesn't really impact the engines the way a volcanic eruption might. So that's the first thing passengers should know. Also, the air is really cleaned and filtered on the plane, so passengers should be okay. But you want to have the airline app installed on your phone, so you're the first to get notified if anything goes wrong. I like apps like Flight Radar 24, Flight Aware. You can track your flight. You can see where the plane's coming from, keep abreast of it, and then I always have a backup plan. So I always know if I'm flying to San Francisco on American, I want to know what Delta flights are available, what JetBlue flights are available, et cetera, et cetera. So if something goes wrong, I have an alternate in my mind that I can tell the customer service agent right away which flight I want to get on, or I know if American has a flight in a couple hours, I can get on that one.
So obviously, of course, if you're switching airlines, usually that's associated with, just buying a whole new ticket. But even within an airline, there's a lot of times that change fee or a fare difference. Are any of those types of things being eased as passengers are dealing with something like this, especially if they're looking ahead? So, we don't know what it's going to be like on Monday, but trying to plan ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. The airlines are a lot more flexible in events like this. In fact, American Airlines issued a travel waiver, so they're waiving any change fees, any alternate costs that you incur. So the airlines will work with you in situations like this, and generally we found they've been pretty good, whether that was COVID or massive meltdowns or now wildfire smoke. Who knows what's next?
Real. Oh, my goodness. Clint Henderson, thank you so much. Welcome back. Well, the 76th Annual Tony Awards are scheduled to air on Sunday.
The awards come at an especially fraught time for the theater world, with members of the Writers Guild of America, some of whom are in the theater industry. They've been on strike for more than a month now. Felicia Fitzpatrick is the former director of social media and creative strategy at Playbill. She joins us now to help break it all down. So let's start with the strike, because we saw it had an impact on the MTV Awards. Right. But the Tonys sort of negotiated this deal. So what's it going to look like on Sunday?
I think we're going to get a very pared down down version of the Tony Awards, because basically the host banter and performance at the beginning, the presenter banter, that's all written by WGA members. And so, yes, the Tony Awards tried to apply for a waiver so they could be exempt and the show could go on. But the WGA were like, no, it's not going to work like that. So they kind of came together for an agreement that all of the things that would be scripted are going to be unscripted. So it'll be a basic format. We'll get the awards, but not all of that kind of typical what feels like off the cuff will actually be off the cuff because it won't be written.
Yeah, and we'll see musical performances, though, right?
Performances, which is what I love the most.
Right.
And what might be impacted too, actually, is that if you're a WGA member and like a nominee, they've actually asked you not to attend, to send in a pre-taped acceptance speech or have someone accept on your behalf. So I know that'll affect the book writers, some of the lyricists, and even Sarah Bareilles, who's nominated in the acting category, is a WGA member. So we'll see.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting to have this event, see how it's going to play out, because we keep talking about what will this strike mean in terms of what we see on our TVs.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly.
I know that there are some historic things happening. Let's talk through some of those things. Tell us all of them. But two of the nominees first are the first openly non-binary people to receive a nomination in acting categories, though gender-neutral category does not exist. Could that change? Tell us about this.
Yeah, so J. Harrison G., Alex Newell, they're the first two non-binary actors to be nominated, which is big because the Tony Awards, like a lot of the award shows in the world, have these gendered actor categories. So for them, they had their own reasons to say, you know what, I'm going to apply under the actor category. I'm going to be considered under there. And they got their nominations, which was amazing. But there's an actor named Justin David Sullivan who is in & Juliet, who actually early on in the season said, I don't want to be considered because I identify as non-binary and I don't want to have to choose. So I think a lot of people, you know, are wanting this to be a moment where, as our conversations about gender evolve, for the Tony Awards to kind of consider, hey, maybe this isn't the right way for us to continue forward, and let's be more open with that. Because I know the Outer Critics Circle, which is an award show as well for theater, they got rid of the gendered acting category. So I think the Tony Awards could take a step forward like
and
that,
Drama
too.
Desk did the same thing, too, right? Basically said, like, we're going to have everyone compete, like 10, 11 nominees, and then the top two get awards. So that's, I
the Drama
feel...
League does that, So it's a conversation for sure.
My feeling is this will be the last year we see gendered awards for the Tonys, but we don't
could
know.
be.
We'll see.
Who knows?
We'll wait and see. I also think that both Newell and G are probably going to win.
I think so too. That's what I've been hearing around the industry because they gave such incredible performances. Alex Newell was also great in Once on This Island in 2018, and people were rooting for them too then. So we're all crossing our fingers.
I like just sitting here watching you do this.
Geek out.
Take it away.
Joe geek out so much.
Every musical
we're not
we just
going to talk
confirmed.
about the Trump indictment. We're just going to talk about the Tonys. Just kidding. Let's talk about big picture here. Best musical, best play. Who are the favorites to win the big awards?
I think for best musical, we've got Shucked, which Alex Newell's in, Some Like It Hot, which Jay is in, New York, Kimberly Akimbo, and Juliet. And I mean, I saw them all. I love them all for different reasons, but I think the fan favorite is going to be Kimberly Akimbo. It's written by David Lindsay Abaire and Janine Tesori did the music, and that's what I've been hearing is the fan favorite. But I think Michael Arden, who directed Parade, which is a revival of a musical, could do director. So you never really know who's going to get which awards across the board. I think this is a year that it's not going to be one sweep, that it might be different people from different shows get recognized.
I do want to see Shucked.
It is laugh out loud funny.
I know, that's what he was telling me. Yeah.
When we talk about the play categories as well, there's just some really incredible new works that are nominated.
There's new works, like Leopoldstadt, people are excited about for Best Play. Ain't No Mo also for Best Play, because we talked about that.
Open for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, it wasn't open for long, and then it got all of these nominations for direction, for acting, so I think everyone's really excited for them, because they were kind of, I think people were worried maybe since they opened in the fall that they wouldn't be considered, and I'm really excited for the revival of a play category as well. We've got 4 great revivals. It's going to be an exciting night, as it always is.
Fat Ham. We went deep on that this week.
We had James Imes on just the other day talking about it.
Pulitzer Prize winning too.
Exactly. All right.
Felicia.
Thanks, y'all.
We know Joe loved this.
Yes, enjoyed it thoroughly.
No, great. This is very exciting. Thank you so much. It's so good to have you.
That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. A lot of it. Stay with us.
Breaking news right now, Donald Trump has become the first ever former president to be indicted on federal charges.
7 charges in all, stemming from that grand jury investigation into Trump's handling of classified documents found at his Mar-a-Lago estate last year. Last night, he took to social media to attack and insist that he is innocent. and also attacked the Biden administration and the Justice Department. Reaction from Republicans on Capitol Hill and beyond was swift and explosive, alleging that this was only done to hurt President Biden's likely 2024 rival. Trump reposted many of those takes on his social media account in the hours after the announcement.
The White House, however, has declined to comment so far, referring all inquiries to the Justice Department.
These new developments also potentially changing the landscape of the race for president, with some of his challengers speaking out last night.
So what does the future hold for America's 45th president, and what sort of aftershocks are being felt throughout Washington and beyond this morning?
We have got all of that and much, much more. But first, good Friday morning. Thank you for being with us. Important day, busy news morning as we end the week. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. We have full coverage of the historic indictment of former President Donald Trump.
Yeah, of course we do. We're going to start with coverage with NBC News senior congressional correspondent Garrett Haake in Bedminster, New Jersey.
The former president breaking the news himself on social media overnight from his golf club here in New Jersey, then adding in an interview that, quote, of course he'll plead not guilty to these federal charges.
This morning, an historic first, a former president charged with federal crimes. Donald Trump indicted over 7 federal charges in connection with his alleged mishandling of classified documents. The former president posting on social media that his lawyers had been told he'd been indicted in what he called the boxes hoax. Mr. Trump adding later he'd been ordered to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami next Tuesday and releasing a video message to supporters.
I just want to tell you, I'm an innocent man. I did nothing wrong. And we'll fight this out just like we've been fighting for 7 years.
Overnight, one of the former president's lawyers telling CNN how he reacted to the news.
He said, "This is just a sad day. I can't believe I've been indicted."
The charges against Mr. Trump remain under seal this morning, but include making false statements, conspiracy to obstruct, and a violation of the Espionage Act related to the former president's handling of sensitive national defense information, sources tell NBC News. Special counsel Jack Smith has been investigating Mr. Trump's handling of classified documents found during an FBI search of his Mar-a-Lago home last August, after the former president and his team repeatedly refused to turn them over for months. The former president has long argued he was not only unfairly targeted by investigators.
I had every right to under the Presidential Records Act. I was there and I took what I took, and it gets declassified.
But even once suggesting,
if you're the president of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it.
But NBC News has learned the grand jury has heard an audio recording of Mr. Trump discussing keeping a classified document after leaving office and acknowledging that he knew it was classified at the time. Mr. Trump is facing legal battles on multiple fronts and was already the first former president to face criminal charges in New York City, where he was accused of falsifying business records, to which he pled not guilty. But the federal indictment is more serious and coming in an election season. Mr. Trump's main rival for the Republican nomination so far siding with him. Governor Ron DeSantis tweeting, "The weaponization of federal law enforcement represents a mortal threat to a free society," while former Governor Chris Christie wrote, "No one is above the law."
Mr. Trump and other Republicans suggesting there's a double standard at play here, pointing out that President Biden also retained classified documents at his residences. Of course, that's under investigation by a separate special counsel, and multiple sources tell NBC News that that investigation is still very much underway.
All right, Garrett Haake, thank you very much for kicking us off this hour. Let's now take a look at the bigger picture in this new indictment, the impact it's having in Washington and what it all means for Trump legally.
NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker and NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos join us here in studio to break it all down. Good morning to both of you. Kristen, let's start with you. So first we had the state indictment here in Manhattan. Now we have a federal indictment. The big question is, how does this impact Trump and his trajectory when it comes to getting the GOP nomination? With the Manhattan charges, it actually solidified support around him.
You're absolutely right. Look, I think it still remains an open question, but here's what we're seeing. We're seeing largely a replay of what we saw after the New York indictment. Most of former President Trump's Republican challengers are rallying behind him. They're taking aim at the Justice Department. But here are a couple of differences. One, you do have some Republican candidates, Asa Hutchinson, for example, saying his legal baggage is just too much. Chris Christie saying no one is above the law. So that's a difference from the New York case. The other thing is He's fundraising yet again off of this. I think there's a question about potential fatigue. And in talking to my Republican sources, they've said, look, expect some candidates to say that the former president is asking voters to defend him instead of laying out what he's going to do for this country. Could that start to have an impact? It's an open question still.
So, Danny, let's talk through here. This is a federal indictment. We have seen the president indicted before. That was on state charges. Of course, both of these are a first time for a former president. What could play out here federally? Tell me what you think about this case, the fact who it is that's pursuing this, and what this means compared with what we saw in New York, which our viewers probably remember. We had all this coverage on. What are the differences here?
The Manhattan DA's indictment of Trump is not that impressive compared to any federal indictment virtually anywhere. And I say that because the federal government, I know I sound like a broken record, they have a near perfect conviction rate. Almost all cases in the federal system end in guilty pleas, and those that go to trial, almost all of them end up in a guilty verdict. For a defense attorney, federal court is not a place that you want to be. It can be depressing. It can be oppressive, because when the government makes a case, it usually is made airtight, especially in a case here where you have teams of federal prosecutors working almost around the clock to bring this indictment and investigate this case. They've already assuredly prepared a detailed prosecution memo. They've anticipated not only every possible theory of responsibility, but every possible defense. If they're ready to indict, they're ready to try this case. So this is going to be a really difficult case for Trump to defend. The New York case, the state case, defensible. Maybe not morally. That's totally outside of my ken. But when it comes to legally defensible, that is a case Trump could win. This case, the flat-out odds for any criminal defendant in federal court are dismal, and Donald Trump is going to be no different. And he has the full might of the DOJ arrayed against him, not just one or two assistant U.S. attorneys assigned to a case. The government here means business. They know this is the most important prosecution of any defendant, arguably, in the history of the DOJ. So you better believe if they think they have a case, they're sure they have it. They probably don't even care at this point about the jury pool in South Florida versus the jury pool in D.C. If they're bringing it in South Florida, they believe they have the goods no matter where they're bringing it.
So, Kristen, I mean, last night we heard Trump hurling allegations at President Biden. We know the White House has tried to build a wall between it and any potential federal charges. President not responding so far, but he's not going to be able to avoid questions on this, right?
He's going to get questions on this. There's no doubt about that. But it is by design that he's not responding. The White House does not want to engage on this, in part for the reason that you say. They want to continue to emphasize that wall between the White House and the Justice Department. The other political piece of this is that the president wants to show, look, it's business as usual. I am in the Oval Office. I am doing the work of the presidency as we speak. Today he's going to be in North Carolina, for example. Yesterday, he reaffirmed that, look, unlike his predecessor, he does not take aim at the Justice Department. Again, this is a political strategy. But we'll have to see if it's sustainable, because you can bet every reporter is going to be trying to get President Biden to weigh in on this and to get his thoughts.
So, Danny, we haven't actually seen the indictment yet, don't have the exact language on these 7 charges, but just remind us what it is that's at issue here. And then we have seen glimpses of the former president's defense. What is it?
We may see charges under the Espionage Act, which really doesn't involve spycraft, probably in this case. It probably involves simply retaining documents that were national defense information, which, by the way, has nothing to do with whether or not they are classified. So the whole I thought them through the declassification process, that's not going to help Trump if these are documents that relate to national defense. It's a separate category. They can overlap, but you don't need that classification issue to bring Espionage Act charges. If, for example, it's obstruction of justice, it may be for defying a subpoena. And then one of the government's favorites is Section 1001, false statements to government agents, which don't have to be under oath. It is, if you lie to a government agent, then you have arguably committed that crime. Pretty easy to bring if you do make any false statement of a material nature to a federal agent.
All right, Kristen and Danny, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Yes, and Kristen, we haven't seen you in person. Congrats again.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Now, the Trump legal team is responding to the historic indictment this morning. The former president's attorney, Jim Trusty, spoke to Today co-host Craig Melvin about the indictment just a short time ago. Here's some of what he had to say.
What was the president's response to the charges? And when did you first learn that this grand jury in Florida was being used?
Yeah, well, on that last part, fairly recently, and it's a really intriguing kind of shift of events. I mean, there's been endless grand jury dragging people up from Florida to Washington, D.C. for many months. You know, everyone from the vice president of the United States to groundskeepers to maids to Secret Service agents to lawyers that supposedly hold privileges. So there's been a real bum rush in D.C. in terms of using an awful lot of grand jury and getting a lot of rulings that are historic and perhaps very bad for the country. Recently, we started to hear about witnesses going down or staying down in Florida to appear in front of the grand jury. And it could be a reflection of an acknowledgement by DOJ they had some venue problems, that they really never should have venued it in D.C., but they were very happy to get the kind of rulings and home cooking they got. Or it could be something where they want to sanitize, I guess kind of related to that, sanitize all of the proceedings from D.C. and kind of repackage, remarket it for consumption down in South Florida. So we'll see. As to the president, look, he's a resilient guy. You know, this just in, you know, he's a pretty tough guy. It's a difficult conversation when you're talking to a client who's actually factually innocent of these charges. I mean, and it's a long story we can get into there about the Presidential Records Act. But, you know, so that part, you know, he was upset for the country. But in terms of him, he's a fighter, and he's going to come out swinging, and he'll be fine.
Is he going to appear on Tuesday? And Jim, do you think he'll also face charges in D.C. as well?
He will appear in court on Tuesday, no doubt. You know, he's not afraid of this thing. It's a ridiculous criminalization of a non-criminal dispute. So he'll be there, you know, and and so will Secret Service, and we'll coordinate with U.S. Marshals and make sure that it is as efficient and safe as we can make the whole situation. As to any other charges, I don't think so. I mean, look, we think this whole investigation is an overreach. Again, something that was never criminal for any other president in history has suddenly been weaponized by this Department of Justice.
I think a lot of folks have a hard time understanding how the president can maintain he did nothing wrong when the fact of the matter is that the president had documents at his home that were classified. As we understand it, there was a subpoena issued to turn over those documents. In August of last year, the lawyer maintains that all the documents were overturned. The FBI then shows up at Mar-a-Lago and finds roughly 100 classified documents. How can the president maintain he did nothing wrong?
Yeah, well, the starting point is up until the Presidential Records Act, any former president could possess anything they want. I mean, that was just kind of the nature of the business. We've entrusted them under the Constitution with the nation's secrets. So if they want to keep stuff, they can keep it. The PRA, the Presidential Records Act, kicked in because of Richard Nixon. And what it anticipates is nothing criminal. There's no criminal statute within the Presidential Records Act that says it's a violation to possess any of these things, even the most sensitive documents.
Well, here's an issue that's getting a lot of discussion following this development. Former President Trump's claim while he was in the White House that he has the power to pardon himself. He originally said that in connection with the Russian collusion allegations. So is this something he could realistically do if re-elected next year? NBC News Now anchor Hallie Jackson takes a look.
It's a question that's never been asked before because it hasn't happened before. Can a president pardon themselves for their own crimes? Former President Trump thought so back in 2018, talking about allegations he colluded with Russia.
I do have an absolute right to pardon myself, but I'll never have to do it because I didn't do anything wrong. And everybody knows it.
But experts say the potential for a self-pardon is not so clear.
A lot's left open to interpretation.
We just have to wait and see.
We'd have to litigate it, and we'd have to see.
Here's why it's such a complicated question. The Constitution does not specifically get into whether it's allowed, saying only the president shall have power to grant pardons except in cases of impeachment. That's it. Nothing on self-pardons. The Justice Department tried to clear things up back in 1974, right before Richard Nixon got impeached. In a memo, the DOJ determined basically no, a president cannot self-pardon because no one can be a judge in their own case.
Just like we don't let people be the prosecutor or the judge or the jury in their own case, the argument goes, you can't be the pardoner in your own case.
Since then, that legal opinion has never been tested until maybe now. If Mr. Trump were to win the White House in 2024, he could try to pardon himself on those new federal charges within minutes of inauguration. But experts say it would very likely go to the Supreme Court to decide whether that self-pardon would hold. And remember, it's a court that has a conservative majority because of the nominations of Mr. Trump himself.
And the court that we have right now is one that I think is very receptive to the prospect of broad presidential power.
Keep in mind, these new federal charges are not the only legal issues faced by Mr. Trump. He's been charged in New York related to hush money payments and has pleaded not guilty. But those are state-level crimes. So a presidential pardon's off the table there.
The clause in the Constitution limits a president's pardon powers to offenses against the United States, commonly understood to mean federal offenses.
Down in Georgia, Mr. Trump also faces an investigation built around his 2020 election fraud lies. He denies any wrongdoing there, but the potential to pardon himself would depend on the specific charges the district attorney might bring and whether they were to involve multiple states or jurisdictions, say Georgia along with D.C. Again, it's that federal versus state difference.
Once it becomes federal, then there is that possibility of a presidential pardon. So that's a reason to keep things in state court if you're the state prosecutor.
So bottom line, could Mr. Trump pardon himself on at least some counts if he ends up in the White House? He could try, but whether it sticks will almost certainly depend on what the Supreme Court says. Of course, if he doesn't win, whoever is in the White House could simply pardon Mr. Trump themselves on those federal charges, at least one current competitor suggesting they're open to it.
Would you look at potentially pardoning Trump himself based on the evidence that might emerge of those charges?
The DOJ and FBI have been weaponized. Any example of disfavored treatment based on politics or weaponization would be included in that review, no matter how small or how big.
Hallie Jackson, NBC News.
Our coverage of the indictment of former President Donald Trump will continue just ahead. We will have the latest developments, of course, in this ongoing story.
Turning now to the hazardous air quality that is affecting millions across the country.
Thursday was yet another day of bad air for people in the Northeast, with the toxic smoke from wildfires in Canada continuing its grip on several major cities, including Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Boston.
While we are seeing improvements, many people are still under air quality alerts. We've been bringing you full team coverage of the smoky skies all morning. Meteorologist Angie Lastman is here with the latest forecast. But first, let's check in with NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa in Philadelphia. Emily, good morning.
Hey there. Well, the good news is that the days of the apocalyptic orange that washed over much of the Northeast earlier this week, those days appear to be over. Still, as you can see behind me, we're not entirely out of the haze yet. Schools here in Philadelphia, also in New York, other districts along the I-95 corridor taking similar measures. They're pushing classes to online, some even canceling them as that toxic air presses on for yet another day. This morning, millions of Americans set to suffer through a fourth day of a persistent haze.
It's like there's a fire, like a consistent fire.
The monstrous smoke cloud produced by raging Canadian wildfires continues to darken skies as it creeps further down the East Coast.
It's scary. It really is.
The smoke now engulfing the Great Lakes region and mid-Atlantic. Philadelphia nearly maxing out the air quality index with a hazardous 444 rating on Thursday, achieving the world's worst air quality. And in our nation's capital, the city skyline shrouded in smoke, forcing the postponement of a Nationals game and an event at the White House. D.C. facing its first code purple air quality advisory.
When they told me it was code purple, I thought it was getting better. So we're not even used to this language to deal with this type of air quality.
The lack of visibility seen from the sky, too, prompting ground stops and delays at several major airports. More than 6,000 flights disrupted nationwide on Thursday.
I'm wearing a mask to protect myself because I have asthma and it can impact my health.
The New York tri-state area is starting to see some relief from these apocalyptic landscapes.
It kind of felt like I smoked some cigarettes or something.
But air quality alerts remain in effect in the region, and cityscapes are still hard to see behind the thick smoke.
I don't want people to let down their guard and to become complacent about this, because we have to be prepared for the winds to shift. This is the unknown.
With drier and hotter conditions dramatically increasing the risk of wildfires, some health experts fear this unprecedented week could just be a preview of what's ahead this summer and beyond.
So the question is,
will this come back to us? And the answer is quite possibly. The majority is probably due to climate change.
And guys, don't forget about that Air Now app we've been talking so much about. It shows you real-time updates in terms of the air quality for your area. And it appears people have been listening to some degree because it has been one of the most downloaded free apps this week, ahead of even TikTok and Instagram. Officials encouraging people to continue leaning on it, especially over the next couple of days as we continue to see the fluctuation of pollution levels. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you so much.
Well, some of us here on the East Coast are hoping to see slightly clearer skies this morning, but let's get a closer look at that and what to expect across the country with your Morning News Now weather forecast.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman is back with the details. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Finally Friday, and we're still dealing with, as Emily mentioned, some of the difficulties that are presenting themselves across parts of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic and even in through the Midwest when it comes to air quality. Now, most of it has really tamed down. We're looking at mainly the unhealthy for sensitive groups in some spots. The worst of it still focused towards parts of the Mid-Atlantic, but we're seeing improvements every hour as that smoke starts to drift offshore. Could we see this pattern kind of come back around? For sure. If the fires continue to burn in parts of Quebec and we get those northerly winds, especially strong northerly winds, it would be a possibility. But as we look ahead through the rest of the day today, already seeing major improvements. Places like New York down to 59. We're talking 92 for Harrisburg. Washington, D.C. ending up at the mid-70s right now, when yesterday they were dealing with a code purple day. So a lot of improvements in a hurry. The worst of it is behind us, but we'll still notice a bit of a haze out there as the last of the smoke starts to work offshore and work its way through the area. You'll see kind of still that haze near this or around the sun when you look up in the sky. This is as we go into Sunday midnight. You can see some of it still sticking around for places like Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, it's been fairly quiet across the country when it comes to your satellite radar. You can see that the Midwest looks great. Parts of Texas into the southern plains look quite nice this morning. And we'll see the Southeast as well, staying quiet for a little while longer. But we do have the potential later this afternoon and into the evening hours to see some of these stronger storms developing through Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and into parts of Colorado. It looks like general thunderstorms, but just be aware, could see a couple of strong wind gusts, maybe some isolated hail. Tomorrow, a different story. If you live in the Dallas area, Shreveport, you're going to want to have a way to get some alerts because we could see some of these stronger storms developing, and it will be the afternoon hours on a Saturday, and it does present the potential for some larger hail, tennis ball size hail, specifically around the Dallas metro area. So just a heads up on that if you have the Saturday plans. Otherwise, heavy rain working into parts of really the whole East Coast. As we get into your Monday, we'll start to see this inch its way closer to the Northeast. But in the meantime, we could see isolated amounts up to 5 inches in some spots. So we'll watch for some flooding concerns. But, at this point, guys, some welcome rain because...
You're thrilled to be talking about smoke.
Yes.
And it kind of clears everything out.
Yeah, finally a real weather forecast, not just a smoke forecast. Angie, thank you so much.
We're back now with new developments this morning in the major news out of Florida. For the first time in American history, a former president has been indicted on federal charges. NBC News has learned that former President Donald Trump was indicted on 7 criminal charges in connection with mishandling of more than 100 classified documents that were seized last year at his Mar-a-Lago resort.
In a video online, the former president said he was innocent and bashed the investigation as politically motivated. The indictment is sealed, but 2 sources briefed on the matter say charges include false statements, with the former president's legal team also saying there's at least 1 charge related to the Espionage Act. Trump is set to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday.
A spokesperson for the special counsel declined to comment on the case.
Let's bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian on this. Hey, Ken, so second time Trump has been indicted since he left office. The first, though, state charges here in New York. But now, of course, the circumstances in this case are much different with federal charges. Walk us through that.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. Yeah, it's so different on so many levels. These are much more serious charges brought by a career prosecutor, not an elected one as in New York, a special counsel independent of the decision-making of Merrick Garland's Justice Department. And these are charges that carry as long as 10 years or maybe more in prison. We don't know the exact nature of which specific charges, but, this has been a long time coming, but nonetheless, to see it actually happen, hugely, hugely significant. And Mr. Trump has a long road ahead of him in a major legal battle.
So, Ken, let's delve into the charges a little more. Trump's lawyer says he's been indicted on 7 charges. Of course, the indictment is sealed right now. We don't know what they are. We don't know how many counts in each, because each charge could have multiple counts. But 2 sources briefed on the charges have been giving some insight into them. So what are we learning?
Right. We're learning that the sources tell us he's been charged with a conspiracy to obstruct justice and making false statements and charges under the Espionage Act. Now, that doesn't mean spying, but it likely means mishandling of classified information. The big question that I don't think we have answered, and I haven't seen any reporting on this, is whether Mr. Trump has been charged with dissemination of classified information, showing people who shouldn't have seen them classified documents. That would be a major deal. That's a major unanswered question.
So, of course, Ken, we all remember the major news event that was when Trump was arraigned here in New York on those state charges. Well, Trump has confirmed in this Truth Social post that he was summoned to appear at the federal courthouse in Miami on Tuesday, 3 p.m. What are we looking for in that court appearance?
We expect it to play out in a very similar fashion, except that it's federal court, so it may be a little more rigid. You know, if he's treated like any other federal defendant, and there's no reason to expect that he won't be, he'll have to surrender either to the FBI or federal marshals, and he'll be processed. A mugshot will be taken, unlike in New York where they waived it. It won't be released, though. He'll be fingerprinted. His passport will be taken. And then he'll have to go into court for a combination of a first appearance and an arraignment. He'll be asked whether he waives reading of the indictment. Almost no one asked for that. He'll be asked how he pleads. We expect him to plead not guilty. And then, look, nobody expects a judge to order him detained. That's really not on the table in this case. But it will be interesting to see if this judge imposes any kind of requirements or strictures on what he can say, because he has a history, obviously, of attacking the prosecutors and other people in the case. Usually judges don't go for that. So it'll be interesting to see whether they impose any restrictions on him. And then this is only the beginning of the many appearances he will have to make in federal court in this case.
You know, and Ken, part of that is the Secret Service. One Secret Service official says that its personnel is going to meet with Trump's team today to begin security and logistics planning related to this court appearance next week. We saw this in New York, but what kind of planning goes into something like this?
A lot, Joe, a lot. You know, at a very basic level, they have to make sure that there aren't security threats, that there aren't some extremist potential supporters of Mr. Trump who are ready to do a replay of January 6th. Obviously, we didn't see anything close to that in New York, and there's no evidence that that's going to happen, but they will worry about that. You know, here in Miami, this courthouse behind me is used to kind of high-profile trials, and there's a way that they can lock it down. We're in the middle of downtown, but you know, the marshals, the Secret Service, the local police, courthouse security, they will all plan extensively for this appearance, guys.
Yeah, something that we saw here in Lower Manhattan, as well as, of course, around Trump Tower when that kind of took over the city. Ken, thank you very much. Well, the prime suspect in the 2005 disappearance of Natalee Holloway is now back in the U.S. to face fraud and extortion charges.
In a few hours, Joran van der Sloot is due to face an American judge and to be arraigned after being extradited to Alabama from Peru. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from Birmingham, Alabama, with the latest. Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, Savannah, good morning. The activity and energy here outside of the federal courthouse in Birmingham is starting to pick up for an arraignment that certainly feels, guys, like it's a long time coming. Joran van der Sloot is being accused of asking the Holloway family for $250,000 to provide information on their daughter's whereabouts, only to come back with nothing. Charges that his attorney in Peru has denied. In a surreal moment, nearly 20 years in the making, Joran van der Sloot on U.S. soil for the first time in handcuffs, guided by a team of federal agents on the tarmac at an Alabama airport, then whisked away by motorcade to a jail just 20 minutes outside Birmingham, where he'll soon face justice in an American courtroom. Van der Sloot has never been charged with Natalee Holloway's murder, although he was among the last people to see her alive. That's in Aruba back in 2005 while she was on a high school graduation trip. Instead, he'll face federal charges of extortion and wire fraud. That's tied to an FBI sting operation in 2010, where van der Sloot is accused of accepting $25,000, promising to tell Holloway's family how she died and where to find her remains. John Q. Kelly, the Holloway's longtime attorney, met with van der Sloot in Aruba.
He took me to the location where he said Natalee was buried. About a week later, he indicated that it was all a hoax, which was sort of his MO along with everybody. Get the money and then say it's a hoax and avoid criminal prosecution.
The person whose office issued the indictment against Vandersloot, former U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Alabama and current NBC News legal analyst Joyce Vance.
This was an opportunity to hold him accountable without being able to pursue something more serious.
That's right. Originally, this looked, like something that you would characterize as being awful but lawful. And then as the team began to dig deeper, they realized, no, there's a prosecutable federal crime here.
Just last month, the Peruvian government, where Vandersloot had been serving time for the murder of another woman, granted a temporary surrender order, setting into motion this wild scene at the airport in Lima, where his cuffs were removed and he was handed over to U.S. authorities. Now, all eyes turn to the courtroom, where the Holloway family hopes the truth will come out. Natalie's mother, Beth Holloway, releasing a new statement. As a mother who has tirelessly pursued justice for the abduction and murder of my precious daughter, I stand before you today with a heart both heavy with sorrow and yet lifted by a glimmer of hope.
Beth Holloway will be in the court later today for the arraignment, as Jorn Vandersloot is expected to plead guys not guilty to 2 different charges that each one carry up to 20 years in prison if he's convicted. Joe, back to you.
All right, Sam, thank you so much.
Now let's get to some international headlines, starting with a new phase of the war in Ukraine.
NBC's Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with that and other world headlines. Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Well, the much-anticipated counteroffensive by Ukraine appears to have finally started now on Thursday. The Ukrainian military started or launched multiple attacks on Russian forces, especially in the strategic southern region of Zaporizhia. Now, according to Russian military bloggers, Ukraine is using tanks, artillery and drones, probing Russian positions on the front line, looking for signs of weakness. The counteroffensive has been in planning for months, but Ukraine waited to receive advanced military equipment from Western allies and to train troops before launching a full-scale assault. And $100 million will be invested by the U.S. in the Caribbean region to crack down on weapons trafficking, ease the humanitarian crisis in Haiti, and finance climate change initiatives. Now, the announcement was made on Thursday by U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of her trip to the Bahamas, where she will meet Caribbean and U.S. leaders. And let's go to Hong Kong, where 2 giant rubber ducks are ready to set sail in Victoria Harbour. They are an art installation called, unsurprisingly, Double Ducks, by a Dutch artist called Florentin Hofman, the same artist who already installed a rubber duck in the harbor 10 years ago. But this time, he says the 59-feet ducks will bring twice the fun, double the happiness. Back to you guys.
We're going to need a bigger bathtub. Okay. Claudia, thank you. We're back with some potentially good news for investors in the stock market.
Yesterday, the S&P 500 closed at its highest level so far this year and officially entered a new bull market. But what exactly does that mean? Here to help is Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver, and of course, our friend, favorite guest on these topics. Caleb, it's good to see you. First up, what exactly is a bull market? Just walk us through that basic term and some of the reasons behind this latest market rally.
I'm still getting my mind over the bathtub and the big ducks, but we got bulls, we got ducks. Where's Garth Brooks when you need him? But a bull market, guys, is a 20% rise for the stocks or the stock market or any commodity from its lows. And those lows were back in October. You'll remember we were in the longest bear market we've had since the 1940s. It lasted throughout last year. We finally pulled out of it. Yesterday, the S&P 500, those are the 500 biggest stocks in America as a group, rising 20% from those lows. Good news from investors because the average 401k balance fell about 23% last year. We're making a nice comeback so far this year.
Perhaps we should call it a double ducky market.
Yeah, didn't they say, what are they supposed to bring? Happiness? Just
exactly,
like this?
Lots of happiness.
Yeah.
So, Caleb, which sectors specifically are driving these market gains right now?
Yeah, well, the biggest stocks in the market, and these are the big tech stocks and the big consumer discretionaries. I'm talking about Apple, Amazon, Meta, Google. All of these stocks have been driving the gains. They're the biggest, most widely held stocks in the market, and that's what usually happens. They can drag the whole market higher because it's a market-weighted index. But in the last couple of weeks, guys, we've seen what we call an expansion of breadth. We like to see that in the stock market, where you see a bunch of different sectors rallying at the same time. That shows momentum. That shows belief and conviction among investors, and we haven't had that in a while because there's been so much uncertainty. Uncertainty is like kryptonite for investors. If we can't see the future, we don't want to put money to work. Finally, finally, we're seeing some clarity. No debt ceiling issues. We got the Fed meeting next week in 5 days. 5 hours and 30 minutes, who's counting, and they're probably going to pause. So this clarity is good for us as we look into the future to put money to work.
So, Caleb, despite clarity, I think maybe some of this is confusing for people at home because there has been a lot of bad news when it comes to the economy. Inflation, interest rates are so high. As you say, we'll hear more from the Fed on that soon. This possible recession that's looming that we talked to you about for months. So what does this mean for the average investor at home, this bull market, in the context of all that?
Yeah, well, as we know, the stock market and the economy are very different. Sometimes they show up at the same family reunion and they operate together. But right now the economy is slowing and we all know that. But we may have seen sort of the peak of interest rate hikes. We may see next week if the Fed pauses, and that looks likely. We know there won't be a debt ceiling issue. That's a good thing. Also, corporate earnings, which came out a few weeks ago, stronger than forecast, and things look a little bit better 6 to 12 months out. And investors, especially the big ones, are always looking 6 to 12 months out. Things look better over that horizon, so they're putting money to work right now. Average investors, you, me, and your viewers, we're looking at our 401ks. We're looking at our Roth IRAs and our IRAs. Again, they fell 23% last year, made a big comeback so far this year. So if you did nothing, you've already made the comeback and already been able to put some of those losses to rest.
I think you just called us average, Caleb.
You know what I mean. We're not professionals. We're just putting money to work every 2 weeks passively through our 401ks.
In this context, it's totally fine. Thank you very much, Caleb. Always good to have you.
More financial headlines now. Google's new hybrid work policy is receiving some backlash from employees.
Yeah, Pippa Stevens is back with us for more on that and other money news. Hey, Pippa.
Hey, Savannah. Well, Google employees are reportedly pushing back against the tech giant's latest in-office mandate. In a statement from the Alphabet Workers Union seen by Bloomberg, Google software engineer Chris Schmidt said, quote, workers' professionalism has been disregarded in favor of ambiguous attendance tracking practices tied to our performance evaluations. Google updated its hybrid work policy on Wednesday, requiring staffers to spend at least 3 days per week in the office. Meantime, Binance U.S. customers will no longer be able to use U.S. dollars to buy cryptocurrency on the platform, curbing its ability to do business in the United States. Binance announced the news late Thursday night, saying its banking partners are preparing to pause U.S. dollar withdrawal channels as early as June 13th. Binance blamed the Securities and Exchange Commission's, quote, unjustified civil claims against its business for the change. Binance has been the center of scrutiny by the SEC, which alleged both the exchange and its founder, Changpeng Zhao, violated U.S. securities laws. And Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg taking a swipe at Apple's new Vision Pro mixed reality headset during an all-hands meeting on Thursday. Zuckerberg reportedly criticized the high-end materials and cost of Apple's $3,500 headset, while noting that Meta's upcoming version will start at just $500. In the meeting, Zuckerberg said he was curious to see what Apple would ship and said, quote, it's a good sign for our own development that they don't have any magical solutions to the laws of physics that we haven't already explored. Ooh. I still can't get my head around that $3,500 price tag on the headset.
Me either, especially when it felt like we were kind of phasing out of the metaverse obsession.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see. The sales will tell us.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see what happens. All right, Pippa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Pippa. Well, some big name companies are starting to lay down the law when it comes to bringing workers back to the office. NBC News technology correspondent Jacob Ward has the details.
Come into the office or else. That's the message from Google, according to memos obtained by CNBC, in which the company steps up enforcement of its 3-day-a-week in-office policy. Those who don't comply will hear from Human Resources about, quote, next steps, according to a company-wide email. While Pew Research estimates only 14% of Americans work from home, it's been enough to transform cities like San Francisco. The Salesforce Tower, this one here, the tallest in San Francisco, the company only occupies a few floors of that one. They've given up about half of that tower there. That tower over there, well, that one they've announced plans to abandon entirely. The head of one San Francisco business group says working from home was part of a perfect storm here.
So you have the pandemic forcing people out of downtown and then opening up the opportunity for them to have a new method of work, and it just was a huge whammy to the city.
This, as one estimate suggests, a little less than half of office workers in 10 major cities are showing up in an office at all. And while a return to the workplace could benefit downtown businesses, not all workers are ready to commute.
If my boss called me and said I had to come back into the office tomorrow, I would probably look for a new job.
Meta last week told its people to be in the office 3 days a week as of September. Tech workers once enjoyed endless perks and enormous influence, but now layoffs and AI have changed the landscape.
Do these formerly prized workers have any say in whether they come back?
You can mandate people coming back, and they may very well comply. But that is not an engaged, purpose-driven, happy employee.
But with companies now taking attendance, they may be dragged back to the office anyway. Jake Ward, NBC News, San Francisco.
Well, today the International Space Station will be getting an upgrade to its power system.
This morning, 2 astronauts will embark on a 6.5-hour spacewalk to install a rollout solar array onto the space station. It's an effort to increase its power. Joining us now to discuss is astrophysicist and NASA advisor Dr. Paul Sutter. Doctor, good to have you with us. So I guess if you're going to have solar power anywhere, space seems like a good place to do it. So these solar arrays are going to keep the space station going. Explain how they're different from regular solar panels.
Actually, these solar panels are made from the same basic materials as solar panels here on Earth, but they're designed to withstand the harsh environment of space. It's not the vacuum of space that is the problem. It's these tiny little micrometeoroids that are constantly streaming through the solar system and constantly hitting every single surface. So these solar panels have to be hardened, they have to be resistant, and occasionally they have to be replaced.
So, Dr. Sutter, we were all together, the three of us, talking about when this was launched. This arrived Tuesday from the SpaceX Dragon cargo vehicle that was launched on Monday. Walk us through now what happens with the astronauts getting these installed. What does a spacewalk entail? What are we going to be able to see?
So spacewalks are planned months in advance. These are not just like a simple matter of walking out your front door. NASA engineers and scientists coordinate every single step of a spacewalk mission, and you can actually follow along live with NASA as they perform this spacewalk, and they will put on their spacesuits. They will exit the space station. They will slowly climb outside. They will get the gear. They will have their tools. It is an agonizingly slow process because the astronauts are inside these very big, very bulky life support system suits. Every tool is specially designed for space. If you've ever built something or fixed something on your house, think about the next time you do something and you like turn a ratchet and feel the pressure on your foot as you counterbalance against the Earth to turn that ratchet. In space, you can't do that. Every single step has to be planned in advance because you don't have gravity to help you out with your work.
Wow. So cool. All right, so Dr. Sutter, let's look ahead to Monday. SpaceX is going to be launching a Falcon 9 rocket, which is carrying the Transporter 8 rideshare, which I'm guessing is different from an Uber. What can you tell us about that?
Actually, what's crazy about this launch on Monday, it's like an Uber for space. If you have a minimum of $275,000, you can put a payload on this rocket. Not this rocket because it's already full, but the next one, you can book a spot. And so this mission is carrying dozens of small satellites. The smallest are known as nanosats, and they're small enough that they could fit in your hand. And so there are a slew of missions from researchers, from scientists, and even colleges around the world designed to study the Earth's weather, to perform experimental pharmaceutical research, see if we can come up with interesting chemicals in the zero-G environment of space. And one mission even has a message from Pope Francis.
Wow. Super cool. Dr. Paul Sutter, we always love having you on. Thanks so much for breaking it all down for us.
I love some space news, especially on a Friday.
Finally, this hour, it's Friday, which means you can grab your popcorn and clear your calendar.
That's right. We have a look at all the movies and TV shows coming out this weekend that you just can't miss. Bravo personality, host of Shaken and Disturbed, one of our very favorites, Darren Karp, is on set with us to look at what we can't miss. We coordinated our red today.
Of course we did. Joe did not get the memo.
I did not get the memo.
Joe.
Okay.
I wanted to not be camouflaged.
I know, right? We're just like one with
We're
the
green screened into this thing, basically.
Okay, Darren, let's start with this new movie. It's starring
Succession's Brian Cox.
Yes.
Which we've all just barely gotten over seeing him in that role.
He does other things.
Yeah,
And he is not dead.
Yeah, he's not dead, and apparently he is an actor that deserves to be in other cinematic, you know, things outside of Succession. But yes, this is Mending the Line. This is actually a really good movie, very, very sweet. It's about a war vet from Afghanistan who is having so much trouble with PTSD and really doesn't know how to kind of survive outside of the world of war. So go sees Brian Cox, which I have to say is Logan Roy. I just can't say it any other way. And fly fishing really teaches them kind of how to calm down and really, you know, process their life accordingly. But yeah, we haven't mourned Succession yet. So
but this is the antithesis of Logan Roy right there.
He's
fly fishing and helping people.
Not saying the F word every 2 seconds. It's like he's not screaming at people. It's very odd, but it's very good and very calming.
All right. In a lighter note, we've got It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which has been proven false this week, but it's a record-breaking 16th season. What should we know?
Wild. I cannot believe Patty's Pub is still delivering after all this time. I mean, it's such a wild show. Danny DeVito, like, this is his best role, in my opinion, of all the things he's ever done. And I'm including Penguin from Batman with that because I love that movie. But it is just so funny. It kind of has the Seinfeld principle of no hugging, no learning. No matter what life throws at you, no matter what experiences, you just never learn. And you're the same maturity throughout your entire life. That's why I like it. So It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay, this next one, I'm just going to say Flamin' Hot Cheetos and let you take it away.
Okay, it's my favorite snack. So let me just say that. If you like this snack, you're going to like this movie. This stars Jesse Garcia, who plays, you know, a janitor basically in the Frito-Lay story. It's an amazing story. Here's the thing about it. I mean, you're going to watch it for its cinematic play. You know, he's a janitor in the Frito-Lay factory. He comes up with this idea to kind of bring his Mexican heritage, the Mexican spice into this chip, if you will. The story may or may not be true. This is directed by Eva Longoria. You don't necessarily need to buy into the whole truth of the story. There are some conflicting accounts, but I kind of like it. It's like a hometown hero.
Yeah, I love it.
Definitely
I love the concept.
Speaking of true stories, we've got the new Peacock show based on a true story. You were on the red carpet, right?
I was, yes.
Let's take a look at that.
Real-life murder that happens on the set of Based on a True Story. Who's your prime suspect? Which of your cast members are guilty?
Chris Messina.
Of course. Who's murdering on your set of your cast?
Oh, God. Who's murdering?
I will say Kaylee Cuoco said you, but
really?
She threw you under the bus. Ooh.
As Detective Peterson, I have some suspects in mind, but I don't want to ruin it for you because it's just so dang good.
Our true crime obsession has now turned into these shows, too.
It has, and the best part was, I asked Kaylee Cuoco, I was like, if you could solve a real-life crime, what would it be? And she's like, Scandival. And I was like, so this is all just bringing in everything that I love. This is amazing.
I was on a flight with him.
That is
we'll talk about it later.
That is a Vanderpump Rules reference for those who don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Yes, you guys got to know the Vanderpump Rules. Come on now.
I know. We need to talk.
But all episodes have dropped on Based on a True Story on Peacock, so you can binge all of them. And it's essentially about a husband and wife starting a true crime podcast, and they get pretty close to the murderer and use that as their...
Oh, my goodness. All right, I think we've only got like 30 seconds. I'm checking the clock. BTS single.
BTS single, Take Two, just came out. It's their 4th #1 hit since 2021. You know, some of them are going to have their mandatory military service, so they kind of haven't all been together. This is right in time for their huge festival that celebrates BTS. Yeah. I mean, talk about Swifties. BTS is insane. Yep. I mean, their fan base is absolutely crazy, but Take Two is about their second phase of their life, and it's a great song.
All right, Darren, thank you so much. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.